Hi there, I'm Mila Sipka, and this is the Apatros Review. Now, in this episode, we'll take a look at, take a look at a film called Spacemen, or around the world it's known as Assignment Out of Space. This was actually the very first Italian space opera. So, and I'll explain about that later on. This is a public domain title. It has been for decades, so it's very easy to find if you check usual places where public domain movies lurk under. But be warned, as the quality of nearly all the extant prints out there tends to be very, very rough. My archive print was taken off the Sci-Fi Classics 50 film box set that was issued in Australia all the way back in 2005 by Palace Entertainment. The only such box set for science fiction films of that size ever released onto the Australian market. As is to be expected, the quality of the print from that set is pretty rough, on par with an old VHS or ancient film roll. Now, before I go on, I'm just going to refresh my throat. Alright. Anyway, now we finally get to check out the very first of an old Italian film genre, the Italian space opera. At least a decade and a half before George Lucas unleashed Star Wars: A New Hope onto an unsuspecting world, the only ones not surprised were the Italians, who had been making movies like that, only on a substantially lower budget and with less technical skill in the visual effects area, since 1960. Born at the same time as the Continental Gothic genre, the Italian space opera was something that was mostly the Vision 1 filmmaker, Antonio Margheriti, who was almost always known in the West as Anthony Dawson. He wanted to use his real name, but realized that since his surname Margheriti is the Italian word for daisies, his chances of Western audiences taking him seriously was not going to be possible. I mean, if you watch a film called Anthony Daisies, that's, yeah. So he always used the pseudonym Anthony Dawson. Margheriti had dabbled many genres of the years since, from peplum. In fact, he made possibly the last decent peplum in the final year of that genre in 1964 with Anne Find the Invincible, which international audiences know as The Devil Does Against the Son Hercules, to 1980s Italian zombie horror. His film Cannibal Apocalypse can be either considered an Italian zombie film, but more along the lines of 28 Days Later, with its plot of Vietnam vets unleashing cannibalistic illness upon New York, or an Italian cannibal film. It's your choice, either tag is accurate enough. To daft rip-off comedy. His last film was Cyber Flick as in cop, a cheerfully stupid knockoff of Lethal Weapon, starring Terence Hill and Marvin Hagler, that was issued in Australia as Virtual Weapon in the early 90s. Margheriti was an avid science fiction fan, and when offered the opportunity to make his first film, he jumped on the chance, starting off with his favorite genre. And about Anne Find the Invincible, I actually covered that years ago. Yeah. Now, in the far-off spacefaring future of 2116 AD, so about the time of this review, 93 years from now, the reporter Ray Peterson is sent by his newspaper onto an assignment to be embedded with the crew of a space station operating deep space. Upon arriving there, Ray, who is given the identity code of IZ41, or India Zulu 41, as every cosmonaut in that future is identified by these obscure ID codes, and these codes are not easy to miss as everyone wears the codes that paint on the back of their spacesuit overalls. And the crew of that ship he rode on are forced to go on a dangerous mission to investigate a rather serious threat manifesting itself as just into that system. After initially making himself a bit of a nuisance with the station's commander, after saving the life of the sole female crew member and navigator by moving her safely away from a powerful asteroid, only to accidentally bump to a fuel line, in the process lose 500 gallons of rather valuable spaceship fuel, and the main problem was because he was outside the station without permission, as space journalists. Ray eventually becomes a much needed extra pair of hands, as the mission to go on becomes even more dangerous than initially anticipated. A renegade spaceship with a completely dead crew. The crew had apparently died while in hypersleep, and the ship's electronic brains locked in its course, onto a path to keep going ahead, its trajectory aimed straight at Earth. Uh-oh. The real complication is that the ship's protonic generator is emitting a massive amount of radiation that will fry anything that gets within, I think, 500 yards? Or 5,000 yards? I don't know exactly. And by fry, I mean completely vaporize, with the speed and effect of a staged pyrotechnic charge. And this ship is emitting enough heat to turn Earth's surface into inhospitable molten slag. Or at least that's what they say in the film. I'll dispute that bit of science momentarily. After several, and the ship's about the size of an American nuclear sub, roughly, a little bit smaller. After several crew members and the station are destroyed by the rogue ship, Ray realizes there is a key opening in the ship's radiation field that enables somebody to get close enough to reach the ship. So basically, you have the ship, and there's like two radiation fields from the projectors. There's a blind spot, like a very narrow corridor blind spot, about halfway through that you can actually won't be vaporized if you can pass it. But it's pretty dodgy science at best. Anyway, that corridor of a blind spot radiation field is a very narrow corridor, and getting through it is not going to be easy. Spacemen, or Assignment Out of Space, whichever title you prefer, despite being the very first Italian space opera, ain't that great a movie. The story is dramatically flat than a pancake, and the pace, while modest, is mostly talky and dull. The visual effects are typical of early 1960s B-grade Italian workmanship, which is to say pretty poor by the standards of, say, anything like up to the 80s and 90s, practical effects, let alone post-millennium CGI. However, that being said, I prefer the style of Doctor Who's grade the practical effects over the latest CGI enhanced blockbuster. At least the models are freaking there. I hate CGI. The exception of Terminator 2, anyway. As for the rather dodgy science here, the idea of a spaceship the size of your typical American military-grade nuclear submarine emitting a field of radiation that will vaporize anything within like 5,000 yards and turn Earth into a molten slug of a rock is scientifically dubious. As well, I can deal with the radiation field being lethal within that range, at least in space, but the most it will do to Earth will be to explode the atmosphere or to impact the Earth's surface and cause enough of an impact to wipe out a small city. But as far as radiation is concerned, well, only enough to rival Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombings. Surprisingly enough, every other bit of science in the film is shockingly plausible. How's that for a surprise? This film is perfect for an extra purpose. It's not that great as a movie, but if you want to put it on as visual wallpaper in your living room while you're busy doing household chores, or during a party, you need something to be on the TV, or even, given it's a PG-rated film and absolutely child-friendly, to entertain the young kiddies while you're on babysitting duty. So if friends come over with their kids, you can just put it on, and the kids will just sit there and watch, and they're not going to get bored. There's no gore or nudity or sexual content of any kind in this film. Like I said, it's PG-rated, but it's a safe film for kids. But there is some very mild flirting between Ray Pearson and the female crew member. Very mild, completely harmless. There's nothing here that's questionable in any way. So it's safe. It's safe thing. Anyway. There is a body count, but it's even safe like Star Wars anyway. So I'll give this a D+, 3 out of 10. It's disappointing, but like I said, for those purposes I outlined, this film does have some use. And Margheriti got better with his films. He definitely got. His next film was like average, and after that he got to passable status anyway. But yeah, I've got a few of his films. A few months ago, I bought from the Treasure Bazaar next to my home. I bought a copy of his VHS of The Ark of the Sun God, which is an adventure film that Margheriti did in the 80s with David Warbeck, the guy from Beyond. If I can successfully convert that to DVD, the tape's in pretty poor condition, but if I can, I'll count it in for a review. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So, Spaceman, or Assignment Out of Space, gets a D+, 3 out of 10. It's disappointing. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions, comments, or associated trivia for this title, please leave in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them. Hope you guys are staying safe, take it easy, see ya.